Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of the Butterfly Princess Academy. Now, just before we start today's lesson, I wanted to announce a few changes. I've been doing this Butterfly Princess initiative for quite some time now, and over the time it's been known as the Butterfly Princess vlogs, Butterfly Princess business vlogs, the Butterfly Princess show. But now, because of how it's developed and progressed over the years, and because now it focuses on a more academic side, a more educational side of things, where I talk about a range of different educational subjects, and it's all about sharing my passion for lifelong learning and education. So I've changed the name now to it's not known as the Butter. It's not from now. It's not going to be known as the Butterfly Princess Show. It's actually going to be known as the Butterfly Princess Academy. Now, if you're regular viewers of my Everyday School Day series, that is uploaded, where episodes of that are uploaded onto the Butterfly Princess Facebook page and YouTube channel, then you will realise that I've used the Butterfly Princess Academy as a name for the school in which we discuss all that. But now, I just feel that the Butterfly Princess Academy, rather than the Butterfly Princess show is more adequate and appropriate for the content that I'm producing now, because the content that I now produce, I've gone from interviewing people about the different businesses and so forth. I've gone from like promoting businesses and talking to different people about various different things. But now, because my content is more focused on educational content and more academic content, and sharing my passion for lifelong learning and education, I just think that that it's more appropriate now to be known as the Butterfly Princess Academy. So from now on, that's what it'll be known as, and all my episodes on whatever subject to talk about will be done under the Butterfly Princess Academy name. And it also gave me the inspiration to roll out the Butterfly Princess Academy name as a whole, because I came across this motto, which was it is, so this motto is obviously the Butterfly Princess Academy, and the motto is where curiosity takes flight, and where wings wear wisdom. And I thought that would be quite appropriate name, because the Butterfly Princess is all about transformation and butterflying. And so, like, many people have asked me, why is it called the Butterfly Princess? Well, it's quite a personal thing for me, and so, like, the butterfly represents transformation because of everything I've been through in my childhood and my early adulthood, and with bullying, mistreatment and so forth. And the princess bit is always related to the fact where my dad always when I was younger, my dad referred to me as princess, so that's where the name comes, Butterfly Princess. So from now on, it'll be known as, everything that I do will be known as the Butterfly Princess Academy, with the motto, where curiosity takes flight and where wings wear wisdom. So, so on to today's subject. So welcome everyone to the Butterfly Princess Academy. It's an honour to have you join me. So today's lesson is going to be about cultural resistance, art, literature and music as acts of defiance. So here goes. Cultural resistance embodies the myriad ways in which communities and individuals safeguard their identities, values and beliefs against oppressive forces. Art, literature and music serve as powerful tools of cultural resistance, preserving cultural memory, challenging dominant ideologies and fostering solidarity in the face of adversity. This lesson will explore the role of art, literature and music in cultural resistance, examining how they function as acts of defiance, personification and remembrance. Defining art, literature and music in the context of cultural resistance. In the context of cultural resistance, art, literature and music transcend their traditional definitions. Art encompasses visual expressions that challenges or subvert oppressive regimes. Literature includes written works that document experience, preserve cultural heritage and inspire resistance movements. Music serves as a unifying force, providing solace, expressing collective identity and defying attempts to suppress cultural expression. Preservation of culture. Cultural resistance often involves preserving cultural heritage threatened by oppressive forces. Art, literature and music play a crucial role in maintaining cultural continuity and transmitting cultural values across generations. Through artistic expression, communities can reclaim their narrative, celebrate their traditions, and resist cultural erasure. Art in extremis versus remote art. The dichotomy between art in extremis and remote art highlights the diverse ways in which artists respond to oppressive conditions. Art in extremes refers to art created in direct response to immediate threats, often at great personal risk. Remote art, on the other hand, reflects on oppressive conditions from a distance, offering broader perspectives and historical context. Both forms of art contribute to cultural resistance by bearing witness to injustice and challenging dominant narratives. Art as resistance. Art serves as a powerful form of resistance by challenging oppressive ideologies, documenting experiences, and fostering solidarity. Artists may use their work to criticise political systems, expose human rights abuses, and celebrate cultural identity. The act of creating art in the face of oppression can be a defiant assertion of humanity and a refusal to be silenced. Example: Charlotte Salomon and Liebon Olga Theatre, Life or Theatre. Charlotte Salomon's Liber Olga Theatre amplifies artist resistance through its autobiographical narrative and inventive visual style. Created while in hiding from the Nazis, Solomon's work combines painting, text and music to tell the story of her life and family. By documenting her experiences and emotions, Solomon defined attempts to erase her identity and preserve her cultural heritage for future generations. Another example, Gavin Oliver and Arrt in Extremes and Oscar Koshka and Remote Art. Gavin Oliver's art in Extremis provides a harrowing depiction of life in Auschwitz, documenting the horrors of the Holocaust with unflinching detail. In contrast, Oscar Kokoschka's remote art reflects on the broader themes of war and displacement, offering a more abstract and symbolic representation of human suffering. Both artists contribute to cultural resistance by bearing witness to the atrocities of their time and challenging viewers to confront uncomfortable truths. Example, Arrt in La Camp Gagunas, emphasis the congregationist resistance. The art created in the girls' internment camp demonstrates the power of congregationist resistance. Despite the harsh conditions and limited resources, inmates produced drawings, paintings and crafts that documented their daily life and expressed their resilience. By finding beauty and meaning in the ordinary, they defined attempts to dehumanize them and associated their humanity in the face of adversity. Literature is resistance. Literature serves as a vital tool of cultural resistance by preserving cultural memory, documenting experiences, and inspiring resistance movements. Poems, tracts, diaries, novels, and written histories can all function as acts of defiance, challenging dominant ideologies and fostering solidarity among oppressed communities. Poems, tracts, diaries, novels, written histories. Poems, tracts, diaries, novels, and written histories offer diverse perspectives on cultural resistance. Poems can capture the emotional intensity of resistance movements, while tracts can articulate political ideologies and strategies for change. Diaries provide intimate accounts of daily life under repressive conditions, while novels and written histories offer broader narratives of resistance and liberation. Novel example, Irene Novakoska in Sweet Francis. Irene Namrowski's Sweet Francis amplifies literature's resistance through its vivid portrayal of life in occupied France. Written during the early years of World War II, the novel captures the complexities of human relationships amidst political turmoil and offers an elusive perspective on the challenges of resistance. Another example, Anne Frank, The Netherlands, and Helena Berfrank's Donald Swakowski, Poland. The diaries of Anne Frank, Helene Berg, and Dawid Swakowski provide intimate accounts of life under Nazi occupation. These personal narratives offer valuable insights into the daily struggles, hopes and fears fears of individuals living through extraordinary times, and serve as powerful reminders of the human cost of oppression. Recording of history, Emmanuel Redberg and Oleg Shabbat, Warsaw Ghetto. I'm really sorry for these pronouncements of names, so I'm really sorry, but I apologise for that. Emmanuel Regenblum's One Shabbat project Emmanuel Regenblum's Nag Shabbat project in the Warsaw Ghetto amplifies the importance of recording history as an act of resilience. By collecting testimonies, documents and artifacts, Regenblum and his colleagues preserved a comprehensive record of Jewish life under Nazi occupation, ensuring that the experiences of the Warsaw Ghetto would not be forgotten. Poetry examples. Poetry offers a powerful medium for expressing resistance and defiance. The works of Theodor Bronsky and Hannah Schneisler amplify the role of poetry in cultural resistance, capturing the emotional intensity of the Holocaust and inspiring hope in the face of despair. Perovsky's Poland Jangalay's collection of poems, Wherever the Earth, from 1942, who was arrested and sent to Auschwitz. Her poem collection of poems written while imprisoned in Auschwitz offer a stark and unflinching portrayal of life in the concentration camp. His poems challenge readers to confront the horrors of the Holocaust and bear witness to the sufferings of its victims. Hannah Schneisler from Hungary, famous poem Blessed in the Match, her final poem plus diary and other poems. Hannah Schneisler's poem Blessed is the Match serves as a testament to the power of faith and resilience in the face of adversity. Written shortly before her execution, the poem celebrates the courage of those who sacrifice their lives for a greater cause and inspire hope for a better future. Discussions of resilience on oral and written testimony. The resilience on oral and written testimony is essential for understanding the experience of those who have lived through oppression post-Holocaust. Survivors' accounts have helped a crucial role in shaping collective memory and challenging historical narratives. The work of Prima Levitt and Theodor Borowski, among others, bear witness to the horrors of the Holocaust and offer valuable insights into the resilience of the human spirit. Music as resistance. Music serves as a unifying force, providing solace, expressing collective identity and defying attempts to suppress cultural expression. Along with theatre, music can lift spirits and add a sense of normalcy in times of crisis. Haruskis and musical Sturm. Janko Haraski's musical Stern in the Warsaw Ghetto and Auschwitz-Birkenau amplifies the power of humour as a form of resistance. By using music to mock the Nazis and critique their policies, Haraskis and his fellow musicians defined attempts to dehumanize them, maintain their sense of identity and dignity. Forced performances for Nazis. In some cases, musicians were forced to perform for the Nazis, as in the Terezín concentration camp. Despite the circumstances, these performances often served as acts of resilience, allowing musicians to express their creativity and maintain their cultural heritage in the face of oppression. We Will Never Die pageant, March 1943, Madison Square Garden, New York City. The We Will Never Die pageant, held in Madison Square Garden in March of 1943, amplifies the role of music and theatre in raising awareness about the Holocaust and mobilising support for Jewish communities in Europe. The pageant brought together prominent artists, musicians, and political leaders to commemorate the victims of Nazi persecution and affirm their resilience of the Jewish people. Conclusion: cultural resistance encompasses a wide range of strategies and tactics aimed at preserving cultural identity, challenging oppressive forces, and fostering solidarity amongst oppressed communities. Art, literature, and music serve as powerful tools of cultural resistance, documenting experiences, preserving cultural memory, and inspiring resistance movements. By examining examples such as Charlotte Solomon's Liebe oder Theatre, David Owen's Art in Extremis, Irene Naraska's Sweet Frances, and the music of Yanko Horowski's, we gain a deeper understanding of the diverse ways in which individuals and communities resist oppression and assert their humanity in the face of adversity. So here now I've produced a detailed analysis of the cultural resistance through art, literature, and music. This part of the lesson explores cultural resistance as a multifactored act of defiance against oppression, focusing on the role of art, literature, and music in preserving identity, documenting trauma, and fostering resilience. Here is a structured analysis of cultural resistance is not merely a reaction to oppression, but a proactive assertion of humanity. It challenges evasion, preserves collective memory, and sustains identity. Historical context: during crises such as the Holocaust, colonialism, or authoritarian regimes, cultural resistance becomes a lifeline for marginalised groups. For example, Jewish communities under Nazi occupation and used art diaries and music to resist dehumanization as their physical world collapsed. Cultural perspective: resistance art often draws from pre-existing cultural symbols, languages, and traditions. For instance, Liebe oder Theatre by Charlotte Solomon integrates German expression with Jewish storytelling, subversing the Nazi narrative of Jewish degenerate. Art in extreme versus remote art. Key argument: this lesson contrasts art created in extremes under direct threats with remote art, reflective works from safer contexts. Both forms serve as resistance but differ in intent and impact. Example: art in extremes. Example: David Orleans' Auschwitz sketches, e.g., for example, the gas chamber, document atrocities firsthand. His work is physical, serving as evidence of Nazi crimes and a rebuttal to Holocaust denial. Historical significance. Such art often emerged in secrecy. For example, Goethe's internment camp drawings, and was preserved at great risk, making it a primary historical source. Remote art. Example, Oskar Kokoschka's anti-war paintings. For example, The Tempest critique fascism from exile. These works engage with universal themes of suffering, appealing to broader audiences. Cultural impact. Remote art relies on metaphor and abstraction, enabling it to evade censorship and resonate across political boundaries. Critique. The dictometry risk oversimplification. For instance, Charlotte Solomon's work blends imagery and extremism with reflective storytelling, remote, transcending categories. Literature's testimony and subversion. Diaries and testimonies. Diaries like Anne Frank's or David Kowalski's are acts of defiance. They humanize victims, countering Nazi propaganda that depicted Jews as faceless masses. Historical value. Emanuel Wigenblum's Oneg Shabbat archive in the Warsaw Ghetto preserved Jewish life through documentation. These counter-archive undermines perpetrator narratives. Poetry versus resistance. Wilfrid Owen, World War II, and Borowski, Holocaust. Wilfrid Owen, World War I, and Borowski's Holocaust both use visual imagery to expose the horrors of war. Borowski's This Way to the Gas Ladies and Gentlemen strips war of glory, mirroring Hannah Schroski's Blessed in the March, which elevates sacrifice as a moral act. Cultural function. Poetry distills trauma into shared languages, which fostering solidarity. For example, Zhang's work became an anthem for Zionist resistance. Cultural literature also reflects tensions within oppressed communities. Irene Naroski's Sweet Francis critiques French collaboration, but has been criticised for its abrasiveness towards Jewish identity, highlighting the complexity of cultural resistance. Music survival and subversion. Skirt and Mute in Logs and Auschwitz and Horowski's used Yiddish music suite to mock Nazi officials. Such acts restored agency to prisoners, transforming despair into defiance. Forced performances in Terezín. Musicians like Victor Ullmann composed works, for example, Gekiska that allegorized Nazi tyranny. Through concern, these performances became covert acts of resistance. Transitional solidarity. The 1943 We Will Never Die pageant in New York City fused Jewish literature and American patriotism, mobilizing global awareness of the Holocaust. Historical impact. Music's anthropology and for morality allowed it to evade censorship. Songs from the camps were overly transmitted, surviving as oral history. Cultural paradox. Music duality is both a tool for oppression. For example, Nazi marches and resistance reveals its power to shape collective motion. The question of resistance. Case study. Art in Girls internment camp. Prisoners created art depicting daily life. For example, meals, friendships, asserting normality and chaos. Cultural insights. Focusing on the mundane rejected Nazi dehumanization. Similar acts appear in Japanese American internment camps in the 1940s, where detainees crafted art to preserve dignity. Historical parallel. The Warsaw Ghetto secret schools and theatres mirrored this, using education and culture as acts of hope. Ethnical and philosophical dimensions. Primo Levy's delirium in surviving Auschwitz. Levy questions whether bearing witness can ever fully convey trauma. His work underscores the limits of language in resistance. Cynicism. His writing rejects redemptive narratives, arguing that survival often requires moral compromises. This challenges simplistic views of resistance as heroic. Cultural legacy. Post-Holocaust testimonial art and literature shape collective memory, yet debates persist about who has the right to represent trauma. For example, non-Jewish authors writing historic Holocaust fiction. Broader cultural resistance movements. Colonial context. Similar strategies appear in anti-colonial movements. For example, negative languages plays resisting British cultural evasion in Kenya. Modern parallels. Protest art, for example, Banks's Palestine embodiment and digital activism, for example, #Black Lives Matter. Poetry continue the tradition using culture to challenge power. Conclusion. This lesson highlights cultural resistance as a global phenomenon, transcending time and geography. Key takeaways. Preservation over its defiance. Documenting culture under threat is an act of extremist resistance. Duality of art. It can be both a mirror of trauma and a weapon against it. Ethnical complexity. Resistance is rarely pure. It involves compromise, arguability, and contested narratives. Final critique. While the lesson focuses on European examples, expanding to non-Western contexts, for example, Indigenous resistance, would enrich its scope. Nevertheless, it powerfully illustrates how creativity becomes survival in extremis. So here are some questions that I've come up with in relation to this lesson, and I will provide the answers shortly. So question 1. How do art, literature and music function as tools of preservation in context of cultural evasion or genocide? Question 2. What distinguishes cultural resistance from overt political resistance? Can art ever be employed in oppressive regimes? Question 3. Why might oppressive regimes target artists, writers and musicians as threat to their power? Question 4. Compare Salomon's Labour Over Theatre with David Orland's Auschwitz sketches. How do their artistic styles and purpose differ in conveying trauma and resistance? Is there a moral responsibility for artists to document atrocities, or does documentation risk exploiting suffering for artistic purposes? How does the concept of art in extremis challenge traditional definitions of art as a leisure or aesthetic pursuit? Analyse the role of art in the girls' internment camp in resisting dehumanization. Why is depicting everyday life an act of defiance? How do diaries like Anne Frank's or Garrick's serve dual purposes as personal and historical testimony? Why might poetry, for example, Wilfred Owen's Jews Hannah's burlesque remarks be uniquely effective in galvanising resistance movements? Critical lens. Irene Nebraska's Sweet Francis has been criticised for its abrasiveness towards Jewish identity. Can literature still revisit oppression if it avoids explicit political stances? How does Emmanuel Shabbat archive redefine the role of histories in times of crisis? In what ways did Yankee Horoshki's musical in Logs and Auschwitz undermine Nazi authority while uplifting prisoners? Can music performed under duress, e.g., for example, in the Terezín camp, still be considered an act of resilience? Why or why not? How did the We Never Die pageant of 1943 use music and theatre to bridge cultural divides and mobilise international support? Why might music be particularly resilient as a form of resistance, even in contexts where written or visual art is suppressed? Primo Levi wrote that survivors are not the true witnesses to the Holocaust. How does this statement complicate the role of literature and testimony in cultural resistance? Borowski's writing rejects heroism in favour of moral arguability. Does this undermine or strengthen his works power of resistance literature? Should art created in extremis, for example, camp drawings, be displayed in museums, or does this risk fomenting trauma? Compare Holocaust-era cultural resistance with anti-colonial artistic movements. What common strategies emerge? How do modern forms of resistance, for example, protest art, digital activism, or slam poetry, reflect or depart from historical perspectives? Can cultural resistance succeed without an audience? Consider how art literature archives gains meaning. Is cultural resistance inherently hopeful, or can it also express despair without compromising its purpose? How do power dynamics shape whose resistance art is preserved and celebrated in mainstream historical narratives? So here are the answers. By documenting traditional languages and experiences, they actively counteract attempts to erase a group's identity, ensuring the culture's memory survives. Cultural resistance focused on preserving identity and value, whereas political resistance directly challenges power structures. In oppressive regimes, art is inherently political because even celebrating a culture's traditions defines attempts to suppress it. These individuals shape collective thought and emotion, fostering solidarity and dissent. Their work can expose the regime's lies, making them dangerous to its control. Solomon uses vibrant colours and theatrical narrative to reclaim her life story, while Owen employs stark realism to document the horrors of Auschwitz. Solomon personalises resistance. Element provides factual testimony. There's no absolute answer. Documentation can bear witness and prevent denial, but it risks exploitation if done without empathy or respect for the victims. It redefines art as a vital act of survival and defiance, blurring the lines between aesthetics and necessity. Art becomes a means of preserving humanity under inhuman conditions. By depicting ordinary activities, inmates assert their humanity against attempts to reduce them to mere statistics or subhumans. It's a refusal to let oppression define their entire existence. They provide a space for individual expression and emotional processing while also creating a record of historical events from a personal perspective, enriching our understanding. Poetry distills complex emotions into concise, memorable forms, making it easily shareable and deeply resonant. It can inspire courage, solidarity, and a sense of shared identity. Yes, but portraying the complexities of human behaviour under oppression, it forces readers to confront uncomfortable truths and question simplistic narratives, indirectly challenging the regime. It transforms historians into active participations in resistance, collecting and preserving evidence to counter propaganda and ensure that the truth survives even if they do not. So, mocked Nazi ideology, reducing their authority to ridicule and fostering a sense of community and resilience among prisoners by boosting morale. Yes, because under coercion, musicians could express their own cultural identity and create coded messages of defiance, subverting the intended purpose of the performance. The 1943 pageant used music and theatre to bridge cultural narratives and mobilise international support. It combined Jewish cultural expression with universal themes of freedom and justice, appealing to a broad audience and galvanising support for the Jewish cause. Music can be easily memorised and transmitted orally, making it difficult to censor completely. It also has a direct emotional impact, bypassing intellectual barriers. It suggests that the full horror of the Holocaust is beyond repression. Repression, challenging the assumption that testimony can fully convey trauma. It highlights the limitations of language and memory. It strengthens it by forcing readers to confront the difficult choices and compromise that people made under extreme conditions, making the narrative more complex. It's a complex issue. Displaying the art can educate and commemorate, but it risks configuration if done without proper context and respect for the victims' experiences. Both use Indigenous language, traditions and stories to reclaim cultural identity and challenge the dominant narratives imposed by the colonials or oppressors. They reflect historical precedents by using art to challenge power and foster solidarity, but depart from them by using new technologies and platforms to reach wider audiences and create more interactive forms of engagement. Yes, it can succeed as an act of self-affirmation and identity preservation, even if it's not immediately recognised. Its meaning can grow over time. It is discovered and interpreted by future generations. It can express despair and still serve its purpose by bearing witness to suffering and challenging the forces that cause it. Hope is not always necessary, but resistance to be meaningful. Dominant groups often control the narrative, so resistance, art forms, marginalised communities may be overlooked or misinterpreted. Power influence, what is remembered and how it is framed. So now I've come up with some rhetorical questions, and then I will provide some insights so you can have a think about these long after the lesson. Question 1 on art and survival. If art is born from suffering, does its beauty sanitising the horror that it inspired it? Can a painting or poem ever truly honour the dead, or does it inevitably turn the painting into a spectacle? When survival demands silence, is creating art an act of courage or recklessness? On literature and memory, does writing about trauma liberate the survivor or chain them forever to the post? If a diary is hidden and unread for decades, does its power as resistance only begin when it is discovered? Can words written in secret, like those of Anne Frank, ever transcend their time, or are they forever bound to the moment they were penned? On music and power. When music is forced from the oppression, from the oppressed, does it amplify their voices or the oppressors? Can a song composed in a death camp be called beautiful, or does that beauty betray the ugliness of its origins? If Sasha mocks the tyrant but is heard only by the enslaved, does it still count as resistance? Who has the right to tell the story of suffering? The survivor, the artist, or history itself? Does documenting atrocity mobilise the victim or the perpetrator? When we display camp art in museums, are we preserving memory or reducing tragedy to a curated exhibit? If a culture is erased, does its resistance art become its tombstone or its resurrection? How many voices must be silenced before a single poem becomes a revolution? Can a regime that burns books ever truly extinguish the identities they contained? Is creating art under oppression an act of hope or a confession of despair? If resistance requires secrecy, does its impact die when it is finally brought to light? Can a work of resistance ever be or is naturally itself impolitical? When a protester's chant goes viral online, does the digital world amplify their resistance or dilute it? Is a mayor capable of toppling a regime, or has the age of strict resistance of its teeth? Here are some insights. Right, so yeah. Art transforming suffering into a shared experience. Art transforms suffering into a shared experience, but but its aesthetic qualities can unintentionally soften the raw brutality events. For example, Picasso's captures the chaos of war through abstraction, yet its artistic merit might overshadow the terror of bombing civilians. The challenge lies in balancing beauty with unflinching honesty to avoid trivializing drama. Artist tributes walk a fine line between memorization and exploitation. Charlotte Solomon's Lieben Olga Egan honours her family's memory while exposing their tragic fates. True horror demands centering the victims' humanity rather than reducing them to symbols of suffering. In context like the Holocaust, creation art, for example, the girls' camp drawings, was a defiant assertion of identity despite mortal risk. While recklessness in a literal sense, it embodied courage by preserving dignity and agency in the face of invasion. Writing can be carefully seen in surviving Auschwitz, but it's also binds survivors to their trauma. Whether later died by suicide, suggesting that testimony alone may not liberate, but serves as a moral duty to bear witness. Diaries like Anne Frank's gain public but their active writing was inherently resistant. The private art act of documenting life under oppression itself is itself a reclaiming of agency, even if undiscovered. Anne's diary transcends its era by universalizing themes of hope and fear. However, its historical significance occurs to the Holocaust, reminding us that suppression is both unique and recurrent. Victor Emery composed in Terezín under Nazi coercion, yet his opera Der Kaiser mocks Hitler. The music becomes a double-edged sword, a tool of Nazi propaganda and a coded act of defiance. Beauty here is not an aesthetic judgment, but a testament to resilience. Songs from Auschwitz, like that of Janko Horowski's, derive power from their contrast to horror, embodying the paradox of art and extremists. Subversive power lies in fostering solidarity among the oppressed, even if unseen by oppressors. It validates resistance internally, seen in Warsaw Ghetto, that sustain morale through dark horror. Voices are responsible, but the history expand their reach. Gave a Holocaust survivor documented Auschwitz through sketches, merging personal testimony with historical record. Outsider perspectives with apprehension, but can amplify marginalised narratives if approached ethically. Documentations like the mobilises victims by however Nazi records risk central their power. Ethnical documentation must foreground the oppressed. Museums risk if they prioritise over context. Ethnical curation like the US Holocaust Memorial Museum's use of victim testimony alongside artifacts can honour memory without exploitation. Indigenous Australian art created after cultural genocide revives traditions nearly erased by colonialism. Resistance art is both a memorial and living practice, ensuring cultural continuity. Poetry alone rarely speaks revolution, but it categorises collective rage. Pablo anti-fascist verses during the Spanish Civil War galvanised global solidarity, showing how art amplifies marginalised voices into movements. Nazi book burning failed to erase ideas Underground network preserved banned works, as Henrik Hahn wrote. When they burn books, they will ultimately burn people, but ideas outlive both. It is both a Warsaw Ghetto secret schools to taught children maths and music, a hopeful investment in a future they might not live to say, yeah, also as an acknowledgement of their present despair. Art gains new life when revealed. Emmanuel Berwick archives unearthed post-war became evidence in Nuremberg trials, proving secrecy delayed power. In apartheid South Africa, Miriam Mangable's songs about love were deemed political because they humanised black lives. Neutrality under oppression sides with the oppressor. Digital activism like hashtag Black Lives Matter globalises the resistance, but risks reducing it to yet it also demonstrates voices as seen in Iranian women using TikTok to protest hijab laws. Memes alone won't topple regimes, but they shape narratives. The 2019 Hong Kong protests used memes to ridicule authority and unify dissident, proving digital tools comprehend physical resistance. Cultural resistance thrives in a paradox. It is both fragile and enduring, personal and collective, hopeful and despairing. It is power lies not in resolution, but in the ability to provoke questions that unsettle, complace and demand engagement. Whether through a hidden diary, a song, or a viral meme, resistance art insists on being of human creativity, even in the face of unionization. Throughout the history, in the shadow of tyranny, in the ashes of Asia, humanity's greatest acts of defiance have often been those that refuse to let culture die. Art, literature and music are not mere reflections of resistance, they are its very heartbeats. They transform silence into song, invisibility and despair into a stubborn kind of hope. From Charlotte Solomon's vibrant brushstrokes to the poems of Borowski, from the survival melodies of Yankee and Scots to the digital cries of hashtag Black Lives Matter. Cultural resistance proves that creativity is both armour and weapons against oppression. It reminds us that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit refuses to be extinguished. To create under such conditions is to declare, you may erase our bodies, but you will not erase our souls. Inspiring quotes to finish and carry forward. Monsters exist, but they are not few in number to be truly dangerous. More dangerous are the common men, the function ready to believe that and to act without asking questions. A call to resist, complicity and never stop questioning. Art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. A reminder that creativity is an active force of change. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. Every act of resistance, however quiet, matters. Where they burn books, they will in the end burn human beings too. You can cut all the flowers, but you cannot keep spring from coming. What is done cannot be undone, but one can prevent it happening again. Your silence will not protect you. Cultural resistance teaches us that oppression, no matter how brutal, cannot extinguish the light of creativity. It is a flame that passed from generation to generation across borders and eras, inciting that even in the face of and we persist. As long as there are artists who dare to paint, writers who dare to remember, musicians who dare to sing, the story of humanity remains unfinished. A story not of surrender, but of relentless defiance. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. May we all be keepers of that hope. And that is a quote from Emily Dickinson. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, concludes this today's lesson at the Butterfly Princess Academy. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you can join me again next week. Just to let you know that now the Butterfly Princess Academy will be operating on a 5-day basis. So like you go to school Monday to Friday, the Butterfly Princess will be recording and uploading content on a Monday to Friday basis now. And of course, the Mag Few week Saturdays and Sundays when I release my monthly content. So the Butterfly Princess show is forever evolving and growing, and I hope you can join me on this fascinating educational journey. But until next time, thanks for tuning in. Have a lovely rest of your weekend. Take care, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye for now.